genetic DNA testing. So this is a fascinating development. It's exploded the last few decades. What you do is you get a Q-tip, you swab it on the inside of your cheek. This collects some of your cells. Then you send that in, and then those cells get tested for DNA. And there's so many things you can test about your DNA. And obviously, I'm sure you've heard about all these different things. You can find out about your heritage, your ancestors, where they were from. You can find out other things that are not necessarily going to help you improve wellness. Like, for example, you can find out, do you have a cleft chin? Do you have a widow's peak in your hairline? Do you have a proclivity for crow's feet around your eyes? These are things that are genetic markers that you could spend money and get tested, but it's not really going to give you useful information to implement. Now, the most helpful information I've come across is testing the methylation genes of the body. There are 5 genes in particular. There's more than 5, but there's 5 in particular that are extremely helpful to test for. And basically what this tells you is how the cells are processing certain elements, and either they're functioning or they're not functioning. And these processes are either happening efficiently or they're not. What's being tested for most specifically is whether the enzyme activity is suppressed or it's low. And if this enzyme activity is suppressed, that means the process is not being carried out. The job of this particular gene is not, it's not being done, or it's being done halfway. And this creates a domino effect, because one process leads to the next process, leads to the next. And if one of those chains is broken, it can affect so many things in your life, and that you didn't even know the cause of. And this is where it gets really fascinating. Not only can it cause dysfunction systematically, but now you can wind up with unprocessed materials in the body that don't get used for anything. And now this basically can create an obstruction, something that has to be even detoxed out, and that potentially could create a lack of ease, in the body, and issues with being unbalanced. So what the test will tell you is, for these different genes, did you receive a mutation from one side of your family, from your mom, or from your dad, or from both? If you receive it from one side and the enzymatic activity is suppressed, then that would indicate that the gene is functioning at a low level, approximately half it's functioning at. If you received a mutation from both sides, then this could indicate that the functioning level is very, very low, perhaps even close to 0% function. Extremely dysfunctional. And so I'm telling you, this is fascinating. When I got my gene tests back, it really how can I put this? It really explained a lot to me, because it almost made me tear up, because through my whole life I've always felt blessed, and I've always felt grateful, and like I had a beautiful existence and purpose of being here on this planet. But I always felt like there was things that were wrong with me, and I never really understood why. And when I got this test done, it gave me a vision into what was going on inside of me, and some, you could call it dysfunction, or you could call it idiosyncrasy, or things about me that I'm like, I don't know why do I behave like this? Like, why do I feel like this? And and why do I have to bug out and get weird over certain things, and or I'm not as functional as I want to be in an area, and I don't know why. This information clicked. It was so clear when this came back, and it really helped me. It made me feel better, because it made me feel like, you know what, it's not all my fault. I've been given this body, thanks mom and dad or whatever, but it's like it has these dysfunctions in it, and the genes are more or less fixed, at least from what I can tell. I don't know how much you can change these. I've heard it said that you can't. Maybe you can, but basically, this is amazing to get this information back. So I'm going to talk about each of the genes, and basically, if you do get a test, what to look for, and maybe some of the solutions if you have a break in one of these genes. Now, I will just mention, you can find the test. Now, the test is around, at least at the time of recording, you can find a very high quality test for around $300, and you can find that test at rapidregeneration.com/DNA test. But here is, based on my deep research, how each one of these genes breaks down, and how much of what I might consider doing to solve the issue, and a lot of these are very common, so don't feel bad if you have gene breaks. I actually had 3 gene mutations out of the 5. 2 of them were only from one side of the family, and 1 of them was from both sides. So, find out, consider doing it for yourself. Consider doing it for your parents, for your children. This could just help give so much insight into how to handle certain issues or why certain things are happening. So the first big one, and this is going in more or less sequential order of the methylation process of the body and the genes along the way, starting with MTHFR. So this gene breaks down folate, which is vitamin B9, into methylfolate. Methylfolate is needed for a series of later processes in the body. It also breaks down folic acid, which is a synthetic form. And if the enzyme activity is suppressed because of the mutation in the gene, then it's not breaking down that folate. And by the way, this can be more of an issue if someone's consuming a lot of grain products, because in the USA, folic acid is being added to almost the entire grain supply. So this can exacerbate the problems. MTHFR gene is responsible for preliminary methylation. It provides the compounds. In other words, the methylfolate is providing the materials needed for later steps in the methylation processes. So just one of the issues with low levels of MTHFR function is this can lead to increased levels of homocysteine in the body, which can increase inflammation. It can lead to lower levels of SAMe in the body, which can result in low neurotransmitter production, low dopamine production. Also, methylfolate is needed for detoxification and for antioxidant effects because it helps to make glutathione. Also, it's so widespread. Someone with MTHFR gene mutation may have gut issues, metabolism issues, hearing issues, spinal problems, infertility, excessive inflammation, feelings of sadness, anxiousness, or anger, issues with the mind, and sleep problems. None of this sounds good. This is one of my breaks, by the way, and it's very common. Apparently, almost half of the world's population have the MTHFR gene mutation. So if somebody's experiencing this mutation because the enzymatic activity is suppressed, he or she might consider supplementing with a methylated form of folate, in other words, methylfolate, approximately 1 milligram daily in the morning. Because again, the body's not making methylfolate. I don't love the idea of consuming a material that's not really found in nature. It's basically synthesized and it's created folate into methylfolate. But if my body's not making methylfolate, I'm kind of screwed. So I would consider doing it. Also, it seems like I can't give exact specific dosage recommendations, but I'm just sharing what I've learned in my experience. Most people do better around 1 milligram a day. However, this dosage may vary. Some people might do better with 3 or 4 milligrams a day, or some people have even taken a high dose up to 10 milligrams a day. Definitely exercise caution. I would start with a low dosage and see how that goes, and maybe increase it if needed. Also, somebody with this mutation is likely to have low levels of B12 in the body, and so he or she might consider supplementing with vitamin B12. In that case, you would want to take methylcobalamin, hydroxycobalamin, or adenosylcobalamin, and avoid cyanocobalamin. Approximately 1 to 2,000 milligrams a day of B12, or up to 5,000 milligrams a day, with some individuals responding better at that higher level. So if you need to find that methylfolate, that's the methylated form of B9. You can find that at rapidregeneration.com/B9, and you can find the B12 at rapidregeneration.com/B12. Okay, the second gene, and I know this is a lot of information and this is overwhelming, and probably this makes a lot more sense if you've actually gotten a gene test and now you're trying to make sense of the results. So the MTR gene, it helps control homocysteine, which is an amino acid, and convert it into methionine, which is another amino acid. Now, methionine is created in the body, but it's also found in some foods. And the methionine that gets created is very helpful because it helps to with body and brain function, basically. And the bad thing about homocysteine is that it increases level of inflammation and basically increases blood pressure in the body. And so MTR converts homocysteine to methionine, which is good because it lessens the bad problem and increases the good problem. Methionine is needed to break down neurotransmitters. Basically, neurotransmitters need to be broken down, otherwise the brain can become overactive, unable to concentrate or quiet down or prioritize. Somebody with this MTR mutation may experience, all kinds of issues relating to neurotransmitters, including mood, happiness, excessive sadness, can't get happy, inability to concentrate, hyperactivity, nervousness, anxiousness. Somebody with the MTR mutation may also experience anger, a bad temper, even rage. They may experience issues with digestive system or gut because it controls the intestinal tract, or may experience issues of metabolism or thyroid. Somebody with MTR with reduced enzyme activity may benefit by taking the entire suite of B vitamins, and that would include B1, B2, B3, B5, B6, B12, and B7. Now, you could just take a full B complex supplement, which would have all of these. You can find that at rapidregeneration.com/B complex. You may still consider supplementing different ones separately, depending on the dosage and the protocol that works best for you. And if you want to take individual forms of the B vitamins, you can find them at the links also individually. Vitamin B9 and methylfolate at /B9. Again, about 1 milligram per day with some additional nuance. You want to avoid ever taking folic acid, synthetic form. Vitamin B12, riboflavin, 15 to 400 milligrams, 1 to 7 times per week, /B2. Vitamin B3, niacin, 110 to 375 milligrams, 1 to 7 times per week, at /B3. Vitamin B1, thiamine, 100 to 200 milligrams, 1 to 7 times per week, /B1. Vitamin B6, pyridoxine, 500 to 200 milligrams, 1 to 7 times per week, /B6. Vitamin B5, pantothenic acid, 100 to 500 milligrams, 1 to 7 times per week, at /B5. Vitamin B12, methylcobalamin, 100 to 500 milligrams per day or as needed, at /B12. Vitamin B7, biotin, at 150 to 8,000 micrograms, 1 to 7 times per week, at /B7. And also there is a segment entirely devoted to B vitamins if you want to reference that in getting a fuller understanding of the B vitamins. Okay, the third gene in the methylation process is MTRR. MTRR is further responsible for lowering homocysteine and increasing levels of methionine. This is similar to what happens with MTR. It's just happening at a different stage of the methylation cycle in terms of manufacturing methionine from homocysteine. If someone has this mutation, it can cause problems in the gut, digestive problems, especially with the stomach and esophagus. It can create a neurotransmitter imbalance where somebody has trouble quieting thoughts and letting go of thought patterns. The mind can become quite crowded and cluttered. And if someone is experiencing an MTRR mutation because of suppressed enzyme activity, he or she might consider, especially vitamin B12, and the other family of B vitamins as well. Okay, the next gene that is tested for is AHCY. The AHCY gene is involved with creating homocysteine and adenosine from S-adenosyl L-homocysteine, SAH. So AHCY is also part of the process that ends up creating methionine and is needed to produce, as a result of the methionine cycle, functional levels of SAMe. Now, this is a precursor for many cellular functions, and so AHCY is more or less indirectly responsible for maintaining healthy levels of SAMe, and as a result is part of dopamine creation. So suppressed AHCY activity can lead to lower amounts of dopamine created. And so somebody with low levels of dopamine in the body may exhibit addictive behaviors, impulsive behaviors, because of low levels of dopamine. They may have issues relating to mood and temper. This could lead to extreme behavior. And if somebody has this AHCY mutation because the enzyme is suppressed, he or she might strongly consider consuming the entire family of B vitamins, as mentioned before, approximately 500 milligrams of lithium, 1 to 7 times per week, approximately 375 milligrams of L-methionine daily or as needed. And the last thing that's reported is a lot of individuals do report showing benefits of supplementing with actual SAMe, SAM-E. Now, personally, I have my concerns. I would not want to normally take a compound that is only made in this human body and can't be found in nature. I'm concerned about the imbalance that this could create, and this is covered more extensively in the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients segment. But I don't have this particular gene mutation, and so it's not for me to judge somebody else. So personally, I don't think I would do it, but I know some people do report taking SAM-E with additional benefit. So if you need to find those other ones, you can find it at rapidregeneration.com/lithium and /L-methionine, if you can figure out how to spell that. Okay. Oh, by the way, if you need to find this information, you can just go to rapidregeneration.com and type in the search bar DNA testing, and it will pull up all this information if you need to reference it. So the last gene is the COMT gene. This gene is involved with catecholamines. Now, this is a group of neurotransmitters that include dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and catechoestrogens. And COMT is especially involved with deactivating them. Now, why would you want to deactivate a neurotransmitter? Well, basically, through this deactivation process, COMT is responsible for controlling emotion and thought and quieting down the mental experience. This allows the mind to move on from thoughts and not get hung up and overfixated. So without this ability, if this is suppressed, then somebody may experience issues with the mind and mental control, such as being distracted easily, problems focusing, irritability, over-perfectionism, and or procrastination. Also, somebody might take a long time to fall asleep or wake up in the night, not be able to fall back asleep because the mind has become overactive. Other issues that are reported are low energy, brain fog, poor mood, hormone issues, addictive behavior, fertility problems, and poor thyroid function. So, not good, any of these things if they're happening. And if you have this mutation, look, don't feel bad. It's not your fault. Just figure out how to solve it. So, if somebody has this COMT mutation because the enzyme activity is suppressed, he or she may benefit greatly by consuming approximately 375 milligrams of the amino acid L-methionine per day or as needed. Because again, that is the amino acid which is helping to break down these neurotransmitters. And so you're basically assisting the body in an area where it's lacking this material, and you're providing that material. Also, approximately 150 to 600 milligrams of magnesium, 1 to 7 times per week or as needed. Approximately 50 to 200 milligrams of theanine per day or as needed. Approximately 10 to 20 milligrams of zinc, 1 to 7 times per week or as needed. The entire family of B vitamins as well. And in severe cases, SAM-E, has also been reported to be helpful. Again, I have my concerns about that. And if you need to find those, you can find that at rapidregeneration.com /magnesium /theanine and /zinc. Once again, this was a life-changing event for me personally to find out what the heck was going on in my body. It made so many things make so much sense to me about why I am the way I am. It made me feel less bad, and it helps me figure out what to do.